Hi folks, and welcome to Antiques. Today we are going to talk about understanding the 5's and the 7's through the creation of the Heirophant, and how the Heirophant is created throughout the creation of the Southern European understanding of tarot. So we're going to also talk a little bit about the history of tarot and political stuff, economics, and difference in occultism. Anyway, so I'm going to light a smoke, or I'm not actually going to get started with this, and I will try to not smoke after that throughout this. We'll see. My hands should be full in a bit with cards anyway. Alright, so history is something I've long been interested in. My understanding of research in history comes from the fact that I was a really smart kid who left a scoop home at the age of 15, and by 16, part of how I was, surviving pretty good as a teenager who wasn't living at home and still attending school by writing papers for university students. Anyway, so I'm going to use some of the knowledges I have there with this book that gives a really quick but fairly base Eurocentric understanding of a chronology of the occult. So it's just going to help put things in timeline, and I'll talk and fill in the blanks and talk about an understanding of the 5's and the 7's, and also why I've done what I've done with them. So, the Southern European understanding of tarot comes into play in 1418. What is called playing cards reaches Europe through the Arab world, probably from the Romani. There quite possibly was both more an Arab and Romani version. They might have been similar. Who knows? It's hard to know because, even before the longer stories, the Romani are leaving being the slave caste in like South Asia and was now India, and they migrate up. It takes a long time. So that's probably how they get into Europe. But Europe also has a lot of commerce going on with the Arab world. So, it's hard to say. And so then this, European guy, let me see. They start getting European versions of them, and then this guy named, I'm going to butcher this, I'm sorry, Marziano de Tortona, who is a personal secretary of Filippo Mario Visconti, Duke of Milan, writes an essay and creates new cards that he wrote for the Duke in 1418, which still survives. And he bases them on is it Greek? Yeah, on Greek deities. So, there's a lot of, Greek and Roman deity fascination in Europe at this time, and heavily within the Catholic Church, who has always been, appropriating ideas from, Northern Africa, Southern Asia, Eastern Asia, the Arab world. They've been the Catholic Church has had this fascination in doing their own Catholic European and Roman interpretation of these things for a long time. Right? And anyway, so this is sort of the birth of modern tarot. And it takes a little while, but by about 1450, playing cards in Milan had sort of settled on the base of the trumps as we know them now, although they go through some other interpretations. But the base of that Euro translation of an Arabo and or Romani divination system occurs. You know, divination systems using symbols, signs, rocks, stones, carvings, pictures of various kinds have existed everywhere forever. Anyway, so, but Europe's lost a lot of this and is trying to appropriate stuff from everywhere. So this happens, right? And then, you know, the witch trials finally end, and then in like 1736 in, you know, in Europe, and in 1783, so interestingly, also in that time period, the 1400s, you know, Europe and the Catholic Church are going through this fascination with Egypt, a European translation of Egypt lore, because they find papers that they think is written by Hermes. In the 1700s, like, Egyptian lore goes through another phase. So this is also how we see Egyptian influences in tarot sometimes, because in the two main time periods where there's this heavy influence of tarot to what modern tarot is today, Europe is going through this fascination with Egyptian lore, and in both cases they're mostly like making it up. Even though in the 1700s it's rebirthed this fascination of European Egyptian mythology, because they discovered that the papers written by Hermes weren't actually written by Hermes, but a group who, like, worshipped him. So, but that doesn't stop them in thinking, we should invent Egyptian mythology again. And they do. And so in both cases, we see an influence on that, on modern tarot systems. Anyway, how does tarot survive this period through the witch trials? Because really, these fascinations and mythologies are in the upper classes and within the church, and so are different than the peasantry who's, you know, gathering herbs and other things and animals and meat and stuff from the closing and then closed commons. So it's different. Occultism in all its variations throughout all types of Christianity, Catholicism roots, it's actually really different from earth-based stuff. And interestingly, you know, you get to stuff like Crowley in that, and his fascination is in the upper class understanding of magics and occultism. So anyway, these are how we see these various influences, right? You know, and then of course again, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is, you know, where we come now to the RWS, and is a very European understanding of archetypes that has come through, like, through this European translation of things. And you have to understand how much the church actually has influence on, you know, the 1400s and 1700s European creations and layers of tarot. So, saying that, oh, I should have an actual Heirophant, I suppose. So, you know, the traditional understanding of a Heirophant has these positive understandings because there's an influence from the church that this is a very positive role. I don't know if we really need to see. I'll look and see. The Kaleidoscope deck has a fairly an image that really sticks to a classic understanding of a Heirophant. Here we go. So we have positive understandings of the Heirophant in this archetype because the churches always had an influence on our understanding of the Heirophant. We have no idea what this, you know, when we look at this through Eurocentric ideas, we have no idea what the Arabo-Romani understandings of this were. The Romani also have gone through a heavy influence from Catholicism over the last many centuries of having to live under Europeans' hatred and discrimination. So, you know, I have the charlatan, and I have taken away any positive meaning of this card, saying that this card has positive meanings on relationships. Has marriage since these time periods had positive meanings on church-sanctioned relationships? Of spiritualities? How often is that tied to government? Oh, this guy's been tied to government since the creation of the Roman Catholic Church. There's not a Euro-Western civilization where this guy's influence isn't. Whatever version of Christianity this guy's state is primarily based on, Catholicism, Christianity, Orthodoxy, whatever. The power tie there is huge. In every major, it has an influence on that card's. Every major has an influence on that number's truth. The Lovers. Victory. Your inner truth, victory. Going to safety, your inner truth. Looking back with nostalgia, love. You know, a healthy understanding of sharing and passing on. Love. Personal truth. They... I have my... I don't know if we'll pull out the shadow stuff. We probably will. The Aces and the Magician. The Aces and the Magician. The tools, the opportunity to use tools. The Empress that provides... We know how much the Empress influences the threes. We all know how much the Empress, especially here, but the Empress rules the threes. We can see this so clearly. We should not have any doubts in how much we see the Emperor, and I've made today's foundation in the fours. Marriage, again, it serves the state. We have pain from rulers. We have pain from rulers. We have greed from rulers. We know. So, the 5's are overwhelmingly a difficult card, like the Charlatan or the Heirophant. This is why the 5's are difficult. Some people say, you know, the 5's and the 7's, I can get confused in the 5's and the 7's. There's a reason we can get confused in the 5's and the 7's, even though the Heirophant and willpower are so incredibly different. I think it's most emphasized today in how often willpower just driving that chariot along, manifesting. Willpower, how often willpower is tied to the idea of, I'm just going to manifest this into whatever. And the people who are most able to manifest great things in their lives are those with the most privilege. And we know how much spiritual bypassing is tied to, I'm just going to manifest greatness. You can get over your oppression and your depression and all these things by manifesting it away. If you have privilege, I'm sure it's that easy. That's not willpower. You don't need willpower to utilize privilege. Which is why my chariot has such obstacles to overcome and is overcoming them with willpower. We've been taught to misunderstand the chariot a lot of the time because a misunderstanding of the chariot serves all three of these people. And my shadow to the Heirophant is polite, Becky. Oh, I got another 5 there. Who, isn't utilizing willpower, but privilege. 5. And our misunderstanding when they tell Becky that, yeah, that's willpower, Becky. Karen, Nancy, that's willpower. And willpower is the chariot. But willpower isn't the chariot. And if you actually come to understand the chariot, which when you learn who to listen to, you will understand your truth. And then you'll find the chariot. This guy wants marriage, not love. This guy wants you to listen to him instead of reaching the 6 and finding willpower. The 7's are hard to understand because if we don't understand willpower, we don't understand that it's about the obstacles that you have to overcome when you defied the Heirophant and found love and self-truth. That's why you have so many obstacles to overcome. And it can look like colonial obstacles and paperwork, schoolwork. When you don't know who to listen to, you don't know whose truth to listen to. If you don't choose his truth, if you don't choose this guy's truth, this happens to you instead of them, because he works for this guy and he protects her, and he protects him because he protects him and him and her, and he protects them. And 7 of Cups. You might choose the wrong thing if you're still listening to him and haven't found your truth. Your willpower, knowing where to go. Is it Pepsi you want? Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Capitalism would actually prefer you didn't buy the Pepsi. And you figure out what your truth was. When you figured out what your truth was, you were able to put in that work and overcome those obstacles. all of this is hard because these guys don't want you to understand the truth in the 7's. You take what you need to defend yourself. Because this guy's going to make sure you defend yourself. This guy used to steal the children. But now middle class Karen at social services does. We don't know what the Heirophant or 5 might have been. But we do know that the church had an influence on tarot in the 1500s and the 1700s, and certainly upper class occultists whose traditions came from the Hierophants, people's fascination with an appropriation of these same areas, ideas. You see the connection? We don't know what the Hierophant really was. But in everything else, we overcome his oppression. Or we need to overcome his pain and then overcome the oppression. In this interpretation and in our world today, he's still what is hurting us and causing this 5. So, this is also why I've reinterpreted some of these cards. Because we're going to recognize who it is we need to stop listening to. To overcome oppression. And when we learn our truth, it's easier to keep getting over that next hill. Because, you know, we're the chariot. And we're determined to overcome it and keep overcoming it. Because we're going to find hope that everything's right and on target. And that's strength. And so that is my talk on why it can be difficult to understand the 5's and the 7's, and why I think we need to re-understand, most especially, the Heirophant.